Everyone, welcome back to the Kindness Code. I'm your host, Adora Lee, and today we're so lucky to have a truly inspiring guest, Dr. Mitchell Chang. Dr. Chang is a distinguished professor of higher education and organizational change, and currently he serves as Interim Vice Provost in Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at UCLA. He's dedicated his career to making education a space where everyone can thrive and has done groundbreaking research on the benefits of diversity. Dr. Chang's work goes way beyond the classroom. He's a leader in creating inclusive campus environments and tackling the systemic barriers that so many underrepresented communities face. He's known nationwide for his insights on how diversity not only enriches learning, but also prepares students to lead with empathy and integrity in our connected world. Today, we're diving into his work, his vision for the future of education, and why diversity and inclusion matter so much in every part of life. Dr. Chang, welcome to the Kindness Code. Thank you for being here.
Well, it's my pleasure, and thanks for inviting me.
So I was listening to your podcast, Inclusive Excellence, on Spotify, and I heard you started an entire DEI community at USC. What inspired you to start the community? Instead of just helping here and there, you made it so impactful. How did you begin with that idea?
Well, first of all, I have to correct you there. Otherwise, my colleagues at UCLA will be very upset. It's UCLA, not USC. So, as far as what I was inspired by, I have to say it goes way, way back when I was younger than you are right now. I immigrated to this country just before turning 6 years old from Taiwan. And fortunately for me, I came after the Civil Rights Act had been passed by Congress in 1964. So I grew up in a very diverse neighborhood, which was very unusual at the time because we had a lot of what was called racial segregation. So I had to adopt the so-called American ways and values when I came to this country, and and the other part of adopting a new culture at the time was you also had to hide your own immigrant cultural ways and values. I mean, you had to kind of privately practice, your native culture, such as celebrating Chinese New Year's. So we were at that time asked to hide those things that we brought to this country, rather than celebrate it openly, so that we can be accepted as Americans. And I have to say, I did a pretty good job of doing this and fitting in. But there were many things like my physical features and accent that would lead others to remind me and my family that we still had a long way to go to be fully accepted.
Oh,
So
that's
when I went
sad.
Yeah, so when I went to college, I learned that there was another path forward. I took several classes in college, including a new field at the time called Asian American Studies. And in my college, they had just that one class, and I took it. And those classes taught me something new about trying to fit in. And I knew that there was a cost, and I knew at the time, having grown up in that neighborhood, that there was a cost to not fitting in, right? People don't accept you as much. You can get excluded. But in those classes, what was interesting is that I learned about the personal cost of fitting in. So what do I mean by that? I learned that in order to fit in, you have to make certain sacrifices. For me, that included losing my native language, and also always feeling less than my white friends. So once I began to embrace all aspects of who I was rather than hide what I thought would lead to exclusion, I think I moved closer to becoming my authentic self, or who I really felt like uh, that I was, all aspects of myself, which helped me, I think, eventually reach my full potential. So now I work for the university, as you know, UCLA, and strive to make sure that others that come to our campus would be able to come here and not have to carry the extra burden of having to hide important parts of themselves, or not being or being afraid of not being seen for who they really are. And for especially young people, I think that's a very heavy weight to have to carry. And I think if I had not learned through my classes that there were other paths, it could have easily derailed my aspirations. So that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, and so I hope I answered your question.
So, in your research, what has surprised you like the most about the impact of diversity on campus communities?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I'll try to answer it as quickly as I can because that started a long time ago. The research I'm doing when I was a what's called a doctoral student, working on a doctoral dissertation, and there was a certain what we call a rationale or a way of thinking about education, and that was in court records and it basically claimed that racial diversity contributes to students' learning and their experiences. Now, this idea really, resonated with me, or, really touched me, because I've always had a lot of friends who were of different races and of different cultural backgrounds. And, but at the time, this idea about diversity and its educational benefits that was presented as an argument in the courts had never been tested through research, or what we call empirically tested. So, as a doctoral student, I conducted one of the first studies to ever test this idea, which we call the diversity rationale, and found that diversity did add significant value to college students' learning and experiences. Now, that wasn't surprising to me, given my experiences. But as I did more studies, what became clear was the importance of what colleges can actually do, and needed to do, to maximize the educational benefits and potential of diversity. And we found things like requiring students to take courses about populations that they had never studied in high school. These requirements are often called diversity course requirements. Now, these such things increase significantly the probability of realizing those educational benefits. So, this is all to say, what I found most surprising in my research was that having a diverse student population alone was not enough or insufficient, and how colleges actually utilize this resource or take advantage of this, important um, makeup, determine the extent to which educational benefits are realized. So I think that's what I found most surprisingly is not just having uh, the right mix of people, but what institutions actually do about.
If you could implement one change across all universities tomorrow to make them more inclusive, what would it be and why?
Well, this might not be satisfying for your audience, but as a university administrator and also as a faculty member, I would work on the faculty side of this to change, because that's the hardest thing to move at an institution like mine, UCLA. Now, I've been at UCLA now for I think almost 27 years. I think this will be my 27th year. And this is, being at an institution that long is pretty typical of faculty at major universities. Students, by contrast, are only, at on our campus for, about 4 to 5 years. So the turnover for people like faculty running a university does not change much. And if they're not interested in advancing greater inclusion, you're not going to get very far on that level. But if we are able to bring in more faculty members who value DEI work, or diversity, equity, and inclusion work, and they can communicate that through their teaching and by leading, this can have a positive effect on multiple generations of students. Since many of us, like myself, end up working at the same institution for most of our careers. So, regardless though of whatever change we make, I think we have to keep in mind that it takes time, and that change doesn't happen, especially when it comes to DEI, overnight. And that this thing that we're doing, DEI, let's call it, is a relatively new thing on college campus. So we're learning to do better as we work toward, affirming identities and lifting human dignity. And with those lofty aspirations, I think we shouldn't expect the colleges to get it right away. So, it's a process that deserves, I think, more time to play itself out. And we have to have some patience.
So, what advice would you give to students like me who want to advocate for DEI on their campuses, but don't know where or how to start?
Oh, wow. There are so many great projects and organizations I can think of associated with DEI, but I'm not going to list them here because I'm sure I'll leave too many of them out. So instead, what I'll do is emphasize, I think, that you should pick, if you're interested in doing this work, pick one that not only helps to advance and support your own identity and those interests, but also shared interests across other, identities or other groups. So, in other words, seek out projects or organizations that increase your own sense of belonging, and that also help you build bridges with other people and other groups. For example, if I'm in the Asian American Student Association at some point, I would want that involvement to also help me see common interests with those in, let's say, the Black Student Union, increasing the chances that being a member of one group will create greater understanding with other groups. So, put in another way, use the work that you do as a starting point to expand not only your interests, but also expand your social and intellectual circle. So, but let me also add this important caveat to all of this, and I think it's important to keep in mind those who are going to take on this kind of work, that from what I've seen, in order to do this successfully, we have to approach it with a lot of generosity and a willingness to offer others more grace. So I think, in other words, this is very much related to what you're doing to advance kindness. You got to do it with a spirit that's animated by kindness. After all, a goal here is to get people to come out of our comfort zones and not shield ourselves in it. And in the end, this kind of work is not only about affirming who we are, which is very important, but also about uplifting human dignity more generally. So that's a long answer to your question, but I'm a professor, so I don't give short answers. I hope it helps.
So, thank you so much, Dr. Chang, for joining us today on the Kindness Code. Your thoughts on how diversity can transform education and create a more inclusive world were inspiring. We all learned why it's so important to value DEI, not only in school, but in every part of our lives. And to our listeners, make sure to follow the podcast for more. Until next time, keep spreading kindness and keep making a positive impact.